So my biggest part of my career was doing shipboard noise control. And we originally were doing the noise control for the passengers. So trying to make like tugboats and ferries more comfortable for passengers or for crew.
Welcome to SQL Podcast, filmed in the MD Acoustics Anechoic Chamber in beautiful Gilbert, Arizona. Today we welcome former INCE President Mike Bahtiarian, an accomplished acoustician whose work can be found on classified U.S. submarines. Each episode we bring you compelling conversations, practical advice, and illuminating stories from the minds of industry leaders, educators, innovators, and visionaries who are shaping the world one idea at a time.
All right, today we got Mike Bahtiarian with us from Acentech. Thanks, Mike, for coming and joining us. Glad to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mike. Glad to be with you guys today.
Yes, so I guess the main thing we wanted to talk about today, so you're at Acentech, and there's lots of points we want to hit on, but you're at Acentech, and you're also the INCE or INCE president during COVID. So let's just jump in right there. I think that's a good jumping point. How was it being the Institute of Noise Control Engineers president during COVID?
Yeah, there was good parts and bad parts. I think we pivoted pretty quickly. Prior to COVID, we would meet biannually in person, and so we couldn't do that during COVID. And we very quickly turned, like everyone else, to Zoom, and we started doing meetings instead of biannually. So the biannual meeting was a whole day. So no one's going to do that on Zoom. So we switched to a quarterly meeting for 2 hours. And so we were meeting more regularly. So things were happening quicker. And so I think a lot really did happen, whereas you wait 6 months before the next meeting and then everybody gathers and discusses what actions and what new actions. We were doing that twice as frequent. And so I think a lot happened, including voting, establishing and voting on a DEI policy. That was something that happened during my term as president. We're now still meeting quarterly by Zoom, and we meet annually in person at the actual conference, at the NOISECon conference. So we still, there is still something missing when you meet in Zoom that you don't get when you meet in person.
Sure. What are some of the most difficult components or parts of that? First off, for like a nonprofit like INCE, what makes it difficult to run? Or is there any difficult I don't want to say hardships, but like different things that make it difficult challenges? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's volunteer. Everything we do is volunteer. So you've got to find people that want to give their time back to the organization. And if, there's nobody interested, it's not going to happen potentially. And I think INCE has been a really volunteer-rich organization. There's a lot of people that find their little niche and do a lot of work. Just to plug some of the programs coming out very soon, like weeks, days, is a new tech cert or badging program for indoor and outdoor sound measurements. Kind of a program that you might send a tech to. How do you make a good sound measurement inside a building? How do you make a good sound measurement outside the building? Two of our members, I'll give plugs to Matt Golden, Jeff Fullerton, and I think Herb Singleton. Three of our members worked really long hours to get this program up and running. They went out to another firm, RSG, to develop the program, but that RSG was a paid consultant to INCE to get the program put together. And I think it looks really good. I got a chance to give it a quick test run. It'll be all online, all video.
That's cool.
The testing will all be done online. Everything is exclusively done online. So it is just a great program. It's not just filling a need of having this ability to get your techs certified in certain measurements. It's going to all digital format. So it's really taking these kind of programs that were in person to to this platform like we have right now.
So are you looking to get more members from the tech side of thing too? So like, is that kind of the driver there behind that, kind of the idea?
It's a good question, and I guess I've never heard that someone ask it, but it's certainly valid. So to be an INCE member, you have to have some pretty robust academic background. So what we're really trying to do is serve a need and help our pocketbook, and there's a good cost, and we're trying to be a bit more, I don't want to say competitive, but a bit more aggressive with pricing. These are not $50, $100 or freebie seminars. I think they're in the hundreds of dollars. Gotcha. And there's a recertification that's going to happen. So there's we are thinking revenue stream. The toughest thing we've had is in the last 4 years, we've moved from, INCE has always had a management company. And we've moved from a very small company to a very large company. And it's expensive. It's an expensive service. It's work that somebody has to do. Yeah. And we're happy to have a company by the name of Virtual Inc., that's the name, managing all of our services. So if you make a phone call or an email to INCE, you're actually reaching a Virtual Inc. employee that will then help with whatever the question is. Yeah, so that's expensive, and that because of that, we are been very budget constrained. So we're working. INCE has a very good reserve, but we have a tough annual budget, so we do need to be more revenue sensitive.
Part of our audience are young, early, mid-college career students, right? So we're talking about the Institute of Noise Control Engineers. There's a fistful of acronyms for professional societies for engineers: ASHRAE, INCOS, ASME, ASA. Just to name a few, INCE, yeah. ASA. Just for pretty briefly, for like a 20, 22-year-old engineering student, what would you say are the values of getting involved in these professional organizations in your career?
Yeah, I think whatever the organization is, it's a good place to put some time. It helps with professional development. Most of the organizations, whether it's INCE, ASA, or ASME, has conferences that you could just attend and not do anything, just sit and listen, meet fellow colleagues that might be doing the same thing and have a different viewpoint. Eventually give yourself an opportunity to write, a conference paper, present a conference paper, have your colleagues ask you questions about your work and have a chance to defend that work. And so I think it's all a matter of growth, and it's all a matter of networking. And just to talk to, the Institute of Noise Control Engineers, there's a whole, depth of places you can be involved. And all of us crunch numbers more or less all day. And if you want to break from that, and you are like a PR person, but you're not going to get hired as a PR person, might not make as much money as a PR person, you could be the VP of PR, and you have a little outlet to do this other thing that you maybe are but might not make a good living at. Not that PR people don't do well in certain places. So I think it's an avenue to have like your alter ego and alter life. That there's lots of opportunities with INCE to do that, to do those kind of things.
Oh, I love that. I think that's something a lot of engineers, especially newer engineers coming in, don't necessarily fit that typical mold of an engineer where they only want to be behind a computer screen or they only want to do number crunching for their whole career. So that kind of gives them that avenue, that outlet to try their hand at something else. That's cool.
Yeah, no, and there's lots of opportunities, lots of programs that people could get involved with, and it's giving back too. There's that part of it.
Absolutely, and I think there is value as well in having that chance to get that peer feedback, and also, you learn a lot more preparing for and presenting at that type of a conference than you do just kind of doing your day in, day out work as well. So. Oh
yeah, and you're challenged. You'll if you prepare a paper, you think you've got everything covered, and somebody's gonna ask a question. I think it's very intellectually stimulating to either be up there presenting and answering questions, or simply sitting in an audience and listening to the dialogue between consultants. It should always be collegial, professional, and friendly. And sometimes no, but I think 90% of the time it is.
So hey, Mike, how did you get yourself into your career? right? What made you decide I would like to do acoustics or acoustical consulting, acoustical engineering?
All by accident, and it's really a crazy situation. So my undergrad was from Penn State. I graduated, I'll give you the year, 85.
Okay.
And in 19, because it goes to the context, 1984, the big field was robotics.
Yeah.
And you can imagine, right? What was in robotics in 1984? And I thought that's where I want to be. I want to do robotics. So Penn State had a robotics class, single class, 400 level, engineering class. Went to sign up for the class. It was filled. And so what else can I fill? My last semester, my last engineering class, and there was a noise control class, wasn't filled. So I said, all right, well, in my career, when I'm designing robots and mechanisms and all kinds of things, I should know how to make it quiet, just as like a secondary thing, right? I was never thinking there'd be a career in it. And so I took that program, and it got noticed by the recruiter at General Dynamics Electric Boat, because they produce a product that is very sensitive to noise. That's submarine. And lo and behold, that started the career in the sound and vibration realm. And it was so that was accident number one, was that I didn't have the class I wanted, and I ended up taking noise control. And then a few years later, my immediate next door neighbor was a gentleman that was with Bolt Brannick and Newman and just started his own firm. A gentleman by the name of Ray Fisher, who started Noise Control Engineering. He was my next door neighbor. And when we first met, we're like, okay, wow, this is weird that we have these people that, like, right next door to each other, that we both have this background. So I eventually joined his small firm. I was employee 3, I think, first non-family employee.
Cool. So if I'm doing the math here, you're close to 40 years almost into this career. Is that?
You had to do that. You had to do that math.
I did have to do the math. I'm sorry.
I had to subtract 10 or 20. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got a plethora of experience, a wealth of knowledge, right? And so what would you say to someone like Samuel saying? Besides, obviously, we talked about INCE and getting involved there, but someone that's looking to get a job in the field. Obviously, they got to have a background in some sort of engineering field, right? But beyond that, you talked a little bit about networking. What are some ways, or what are some things that you would recommend that folks could do to kind of get in front of decision makers and kind of get their feet wet and start down this path?
Yeah, I think there's two good ones. One that anybody can do from your desk, and that's LinkedIn. Which didn't exist, back in the day. It really is a great platform to express some opinions, to post yourself, to have your credentials there. Maybe there's not a lot in that LinkedIn profile right away, but it also seems to be a place where people that are looking to hire people, whether it's the companies themselves or recruiters, are spending a lot of time. And so I have about 6 nieces and nephews. I have 2 daughters that are in the early job market ages, and for every single one, I'm telling them, have a LinkedIn profile, have a good photo, have an up-to-date profile, and put yourself out there. That's one. The other one, and going back to INCE, INCE has a pretty robust student program, and the other thing I'm doing now, I'm actually vice chair, and I'll plug NoiseCon 2025 in Stowe, Vermont in June. And we will have a number of student programs, including one, it's called the Sunday Student Symposium, that will allow students to come and hear from someone that's an acoustics consultant, someone that works in defense industry, and another professional that works in another realm of our industry. And at the end of the 3 different talks, there'll be a networking session, so that the students can kind of it's not meant to be recruiting, but can kind of get out there and talk to people about employment, or what would it take, or that kind of thing.
It's awesome. I love that you're doing the outreach there. That's good. That's great. That's great advice.
Yeah. No, I try all the time to, people that are looking to be employed in this industry to kind of, you got to do the work yourself. I can't do it for you. And unfortunately, I can't hire anyone. I'm not in that position at Acentech, but you can provide I truly like telling people, okay, but these are the things you need to do.
Sounds like INCE as a group is really trying to get people in and trying to get people into the realm of acoustics and things. You mentioned that you kind of stumbled upon acoustics. Unlike these two, I stumbled upon acoustics. It was never supposed to be the thing I was supposed to do. And then you brought up how people can kind of get in and network and things like that. I did want to kind of come back a little bit to that certification program for field techs. I'm assuming you don't need to be an INCE member to do that, correct?
Yeah, no, because if you were a technician, so to be an INCE member, you need to have 2 academic classes in acoustics or vibration. And I think you need to have an undergrad degree. Yeah. So if you're a tech, you probably wouldn't have that. So there really is no requirement. In fact, if your grandmother wants to take the program and has the energy, please sign up.
Well, I bring that up because
or grandfather.
I bring that up because my path into acoustics was through being a field tech, basically, and now I kind of head our field techs here in our office a lot, and I think it's a really great thing. I mean, I spent years doing field work, and so something like that it shows to people that you do know what you're talking about. You do know what you're saying. You do know how to take these measurements to a standard that's important, and it's great. I was really excited to hear about it. I almost want to do it myself, just because.
It might be worth doing, so that you know what that tech you're sending to is getting into, and what they should be capable of when they're done. But I think we're all in the same boat. I mean, when we are either out in the field or we're sending people out in the field, and you want to send somebody out in the field, you want to know when you're instructing someone out in the field what they should expect, and what settings to put meters on, where to stand, where not to stand. That kind of thing, if it's an industrial environment, and it just helps for either managing that tech and also getting back something that's good, right? How many times have you got something back and you're like, did you have this on the right? Did you have this on fast or slow? Have something sound level meter set wrong because you forgot to tell them that one little thing.
Yeah.
Right. Or they get out in the field and it's completely different from what you prepared them for, and they have to make adaptations on the fly. And
right, and I try not to have our staff go in the field alone without me knowing exactly what they're gonna face, and if I can't do that, I usually like to then go, or I'm like, okay, if you have something you don't know, you can call me, and if it's really important, it's like, all right. If it's a late night survey, I'm sure you guys do a lot of late night work. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, I will or will not answer my phone tonight. If they're depending on what it is.
So if you were to tell a job description for what acoustical consultant is, because we haven't really had on the podcast a consultant yet, right?
Nope.
We've had Derek. Mm-hmm. From Train.
You got a PhD.
You got different people, but we haven't had that. So maybe give us a brief, what is acoustical consultant, and one other thing I'd say, what is an acoustical consultant, and one of the acoustical challenges you've worked on that was really interesting.
Yeah. So an acoustical consultant is somebody that's got some technical training, whether it's engineering or physics or architecture, they all can go into that realm. But having that training lead to a good understanding of acoustics, general sound propagation, sound generation, sound propagation, sound reception, background in room acoustics or noise control, or say other things that may be like highway noise or airport noise that become a little bit more specific. It's a technical person that's going to, with that background, that's going to lead studies of various types, that usually result in an analysis of some sound issue, and a report and an end result being some report saying, this is how you make the factory floor quieter. Here's how this new life sciences building complies or doesn't comply with a city ordinance of note. Here's how to treat a concert hall to make it sound better. Those all fall into room acoustics. Into acoustics and noise control. I in my bio, my Acentech bio, I kind of say, the thing I say is that acoustical consultant needs to know a little bit about everything, including people. And by that I mean, in the world I'm in, I need to know a little bit about how a building goes together. I need to know a little bit about structure. I need to know a little bit about HVAC, and I need to know a lot about noise control. So let's take HVAC. I need to know about flow rate, velocity, ducts, duct bends, blah, blah, blah. I'm not designing an HVAC system because it's very, very detailed work. But I need to know all those little pieces to be able to address, say, a high noise problem in a room. Is it coming from an HVAC duct? And is it, high flow at the diffuser, or is it the fan that's, maybe too close to that diffuser? And then you got to know a little about people. Like, why is this bothering somebody? Well, it's the CEO's office, and he has meetings in that room. And when they sit and talk, they can't hear the person, 10 feet away. So you really got to know a lot of parts of life to do a complete study.
Cool. And so what was, and that's a great synopsis of kind of overall. I like that. That's a good description. Now, what is one project that you worked on that stands out in your career that you would love to maybe share?
Well, yeah. So I think one of the bigger projects I worked on were these back in 2000. So my biggest part of my career was doing shipboard noise control, and we originally were doing the noise control for the passengers. So trying to make like tugboats and ferries more comfortable for passengers or for crew. In 2000, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, had a request for quiet but underwater noise controlled sound for some fishery research vessels, so they could do better sonar measurements. And a lot of the fish stock, which is fish counting, is now done acoustically because of these boats. And so it brought me back to my days doing underwater noise with electric boat, and we had to pretty much look at everything in the boat. At one point, the shipyard was sending us every drawing that they were producing. Now, I would look at the drawing and 10 seconds and go, okay, yeah, we don't need to look at this anymore. But there was that when the first ship was built, we were looking through everything, considering everything for noise, because the shipyard had a underwater sound limit they needed to meet, and it was a challenge. This was not a top tier shipyard. This was maybe a second tier shipyard that never built a quiet ship for underwater noise, or URN, underwater radiated noise. And their oversight, so NOAA contracted out their oversight to all the Navy experts. So they had all these Navy people kind of, looking at what we were doing, going, "Oh, you guys don't know what you're doing." In the end, we did, and the ship was built with a couple of little hiccups along the way to the sound spec that was eventually achieved, but it was a lot of work. And they eventually built 2 more vessels. So there was a lot of travel down to the Gulf Coast. There was a lot of at-sea testing. I was responsible for developing the commercial methods for doing the measurements at sea for the first time, like in a commercial sense. I had all kinds of Navy people looking over my shoulder and kind of laughing at our capabilities. I had the opportunity to go to 2 different Navy labs and see how they do it. So it's kind of like, supersizing everything like by 10. When you go to the Navy facility, it's quite impressive.
Well, that's awesome.
That is cool. So what were some of the noise sources, just for someone that doesn't know anything about about shipboard noise, underwater radiated noise. Like you said, you had to look at everything on the boat. Could you just give a couple of examples? What were some of the noise sources you were trying to control, and what did you do to control them?
So let's preface that. For a submarine, you're looking at everything, anything that rotates, and so for this vessel, number one, propeller. And the propeller on this vessel that we were designing was a provided item, effectively. The Navy had it designed and said, here, this is the propeller you're using. We own it, so don't worry about it. So that leaves everything else. And everything else then is the propulsion plant in the hull. So the next biggest thing is and this ship was a diesel electric plant, meaning there were 4 diesel generators producing electricity. Some of that electric load would go to hotel, so lights, air conditioning, any electronics, anything, in the ship that was using electricity. A bulk of the power went to powering a giant series of giant electric motors that turn the propeller shaft. And so that allowed this diesel engine, which is really a noisy and very high vibration source, to be isolated better. And the design of the vibration isolation system was something we spent innumerable amount of time both designing, analyzing, checking mount heights. It was a 2-stage system that really was, in my opinion, very much too complicated for the amount of attenuation it provided.
How everything attaches to the boat then will affect how it radiates out into the water. And
so just to drill into that, so you have a piece of a component, a diesel engine and a generator. Any lines going to that, fuel lines, water cooling lines, electrical lines, all have to be through flex coupling, and their connection of those lines back to ship structure all have to be isolated. And you don't want to put a fuel line on the center of a bulkhead, right? Because it basically like hitting the center of a drum with a drumstick. So we always had to have stiffeners and then vibration isolators. You can imagine, large numbers of vibration isolators, large numbers of things that had to be inspected. Among the other things on the hull were damping tiles that reduced any vibration that got into the hull. That was all part of the overall design. So there was a lot to it.
How long did it take to go from, we'll say, I guess, sign contract to build out?
So sign contract I believe was 2000, maybe 2001, and then our final sea trial for boat 1 was 2004. So that's like 3 or 4 years.
And then
that was a detailed design, construction, and then and then a pretty long commissioning. And
so you would go do job walks here and there as well, weekly, monthly. We
were down, probably monthly. Cool. Any of the biggest pieces of equipment we tested in the factory to say, okay, we were budgeting so much vibration from, say, the diesel engine. We're budgeting, so many micro G's of vibration. And that level of micro G then gets projected into the underwater sound. So if it's, 100 micro G's, and it's more, and the actual equipment's higher than that, it's an early indication that you're gonna have a problem. So we were testing in the factory, then we were testing on the ship before the ship went to sea. So you could see that the whole point of the program was to make sure that when you got to the end, there wasn't a oops. We still had an oops or two, but they weren't big, and they were all recoverable.
Something that came to my mind, and I get it all the time from people when I explain to them what we do. You did a great job explaining what a consultant is, but I always tell people that if it's noise or vibration, we want to fix it. And you very interchangeably, when you were talking about boats, you talked about vibration and you talked about noise, and kind of very interchangeable. And anybody who doesn't really know what we do kind of goes, vibration? Wait, what? So my question for you is, as a consultant, what do you enjoy more, a sound problem or a vibration problem?
That's a good question. It kind of depends what the subject is. Since moving to Acentech, Acentech has some of the world's vibration experts. I got to give a plug out to my old colleague who is now retired, a gentleman by the name of Eric Unger, who is one of the world's leading experts in vibration damping. So with that wealth of experts on staff, I do tend to deal more with noise problems, and I think it's just a little easier sometimes to handle. Now, when we were doing some of the work I was doing shipboard, here's a bit of free advice. It is very likely that any noise problem on a ship is essentially a vibration problem. And if you could fix the vibration, you're probably fixing the noise. So any shipboard environment, there was much more sleuthing for vibration than for noise. And very often you would find some kind of resonant condition that was all vibratory. That really was not acoustic. Yet it was producing a large vibration and a large sound problem that goes with it.
Gotcha. Well, to kind of wrap things up, I was going to ask you a little bit more about INCE. So INCE has gone out. They're trying to get more students. Do you have an idea in terms of, does INCE put out there like a growth, like, hey, we're trying to grow this much per year? Do they have goals? Do you mind sharing any of those?
Yeah, no. I'm happy to share that thoughts on that. We don't have goal per se, like, we have a quota or something. I know, given that Samuel just became INCE board certified, the outgoing VP of board certification was set a goal for himself to have 200 nationwide 200 board certs, and I think he achieved that. I think that was the only part of INCE that had like somebody was actually writing a goal down and working to get to it. And prior to that, maybe it was about 150 or so. So Samuel, you're still part of a small group that, would say we're about 4 per state, roughly. Some states, I think there are a couple of states that there's 0 board cert members these days. And like Massachusetts, California, has a pretty large number.
And for NoiseCon Vermont, we just drafted up here at our company, we always like to push people to go write white papers for it, right, and support the team. So Samuel kind of did an initial draft of an abstract, and then we'll probably present it to 2 or 3 of our remote staff who are just getting their feet into INCE and just getting started. But we'll send 1 or 2 representatives and write a couple papers and support it.
Yeah,
so
that's
we're
great.
Excited for that.
Yeah, it's looking to be a good conference. I mean, I'm vice chair. It's in a really neat venue. We tried to make this one a little different than being in the downtown city area. It's a beautiful resort right at the base of Stowe Mountain, which is ski country. We're not going to be there during, ski season. It'll be June. But it'll be mountains. There'll be a lot more things about natural quiet. There's a plan for a sound walk, like a soundscape walk. So kind of getting into the natural quiet of the Green Mountains of Vermont. There'll be more events that are family oriented. We're kind of trying to make this to be a more of a family focused event. So if those staff were not just bringing spouses but kids, there's programming that'll be appropriate for them. So yeah. So.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and we appreciate your time and also your volunteering in INCE and doing everything there and kind of leading those efforts. So thanks again, Mike, for joining us.